This is Comic Geek Speak, episode 1688, Previews.
Laser beams, opinions like the seasons, and everything you read in comics, movies, games, toys, artists, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek, uniting the world's mightiest heroes. This is...
I'm Adam Murdo.
And I'm Chris Eberly.
Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. It is that time of the month again, coming a little later than it usually does.
Indeed.
Owing to circumstances beyond our control. But here's Adam and Chris, your two-man crew, here to talk to you about some of the most exciting releases coming up in the month of April.
And may I say, brother, what a thrill to be here in the studio, as you put it, at the Arthurian table. You and I stepping into the breach. Go through previews.
Yes, those of you who've seen a picture of the studio know we do literally sit around a giant round table at the CGS studio to record this with special chairs for everyone. Matt's the only one who has one with his personal crest on the back of it.
Indeed.
Of course, but yes, and I'm very happy to have you here live and in person in the flesh, Chris.
Yes. I can only stay for a brief period, but we'll knock out what we can. Let's do the sponsor, though, right? My friend?
Oh, yes, of course. And as always, this previews episode of Comic Geek Speak is brought to you by our oldest and dearest sponsor, Discount Comic Book Service, whose web presence is at dcbservice.com, your source for all of your online comic book pre-ordering needs. And DCBS has been just a patron saint to us over the years, not just for their patronage, but for their service as a provider of comics to those of us who are not fortunate enough to live in an area where a quality LCS can be found. You can go there and order all of your comic books, trade paperbacks, hardcovers, the previews catalog, all of your collecting accessories. They've got a whole lot of stuff there for the comic book collector at very reasonable prices. New DC and Marvel regular single-issue monthly comics are just about always 45% off from Go, with other additional discounts of 50% off, or even on rare and special occasions all the way up to 75% off. Plus, all DC Comics and Marvel Comics hardcovers and trade paperbacks start at 50% off as well. And they've got a wide selection of independent comics available at discounted prices as well, although the discounts aren't quite as high. And every month they've got special spotlighted single-issue comics at special discounts, and they have those bundles for which they're so justly famous. For this month, for example, they have got a Marvel Legacy bundle, where if you buy every single title Marvel is releasing for the month of April, you can get them all from DCBS at 50% off the total cover price. There's a Valiant bundle, where you can buy everything from Valiant for April for only $10.80 from the looks of it. They've got a whole bunch of different DC bundles available. So, yes, the bargains abound at dcbservice.com, your headquarters for online comic book ordering, known for their excellent prices and superb customer service. Please give them your business. You will not regret it. Legions of Comic Geek Speak listeners cannot be wrong.
Indeed. Hear, hear. Before we begin, I should open some gifts that were in the CGS mailbag, as you always put it.
Yeah, because that's how long it's been since you've been in the studio.
I have been in the studio since August. So I believe this one's from Dr. Eamon Clark, based on the wrapping paper.
Oh, yes. Appears to be a British comic book cover.
This paper is so freaking cool, I don't even want to damage it too much as I open it.
Cover price is 14 pence.
Indeed. Now I'm going to guess this must have a 2000 AD theme.
Everything comes back to that.
Yes. Oh, wow. Scream and Misty, 2000 AD presents all new stories inside. Halloween special from October 2017.
Oh, wow.
Oh, this looks fantastic.
That's recent.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Doctor. We got 6 stories. The 13th floor, that's always ominous. The Dracula File, Deathman, The Gathering, Return of Black Max, Blood Moon, The Return of the Sentinels, Fate of the Fairy Hunter. This looks like it's very much in keeping with the sort of 1970s horror magazine traditions. I'm really looking forward to reading this. Thank you so much, sir. A wonderful present. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, that does seem to harken back to those Warren days.
Yes, it does. All right, now the only issue I have here, I have two more gifts, is that I'm not sure who sent me these. We got a wonderful note from listener, is it Sam Imbriale?
That's how I would pronounce
Okay,
that.
Sam, I mispronounced your name. I apologize.
Quarter in the jar.
But Pants usually is the logistical caretaker of such things. He's not here, so I'm not sure who sent which gift to me, and I apologize for that, but I will certainly be profuse in my gratitude all the same.
It's possible one of them came from John Morrissey,
Okay,
who posts on the forums as the Marvel Man.
let's see what we got here. Wow. One of my favorite current books, Briggs Land, which I've raved about on the air many times. And it looks like, as I cut the tape here, oh, wait, it's not just Briggs Land. It's signed by Brian Wood. But then we have Massive the Ninth Wave, another great Brian Wood book, and then Star Trek The Q Gambit. Wow, these are fantastic. Thank you so much. Whether this is John or Sam, it's one of you. I really appreciate this gift. Wonderful. Thank you. And the other.
In Spider-Man wrapping paper.
Key to my heart right there. Good old Spidey. Oh, look at... Oh, Murd. Oh, I'm getting heart palpitations. Oh, Murd. Look at this. The Vault of Horror, the EC Archives, Volume 1. Wow. What a fantastic gift. As many listeners know, EC is one of the Mac daddies of, high-quality comics in the pre-code era, as we often say. I mean, they set the standard in many ways, and this is a wonderful gift. Mm-hmm. So thank you to Sam and, was it John you said? Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm assuming these are... one of these gifts is from each of those fine men, and they are deeply appreciated. And Sam, thank you again for the wonderful note. Wonderful. Oh, what do you got there, Mert?
Well, I think we'll wait and open it another time.
All right.
It's something else that'll just stay in the CGS mailbag for now.
You bet.
We'll get to it another time. And before we get down to our usual monthly rundown of the Previews catalog, to look at what looks most interesting, released mainly in the month of April, I did want to make a special CGS-related announcement that I think some of you have probably been waiting for.
Yes.
And that is the initial announcement of the Comic Geek Speak Best of 2017 Awards.
Yes.
Yes, we're going to try and make
Huzzah.
those happen again one more time. And I'm sorry that we're a little behind schedule in announcing that, too, but things have been a little strange around here lately. But we are going to try to have our annual awards ceremony again, and that means we're throwing open the nominations process, as always, to you, the Comic Geek Speak listeners. Yes, we're accepting nominations for what you think are the best the comics had to offer in the previous year in 16 categories, which are as follows. I'm going to read them now and never again until the nominations episode. You can find a complete list at thecomicforums.vanillaforums.com. Click on the Comics Talk Community link, and there you will find a thread with the complete details. But the categories are: Best New Hero or Hero Team to debut in 2017. Best New Villain or Villain Team. Best New Comic, first issue to have been shipped in 2017. Best Limited Series, last issue to have been shipped in 2017. Best Single Issue or One Shot. Best Cliffhanger or Single Moment in a comic book. Best Storyline, that's either within a single series or across multiple series, so crossovers are fair game there. Best Sleeper or Surprise Hit. Best Ongoing Comic that didn't need to have begun publication in 2017. Best Graphic Album, that's either a collection of a reprinting of earlier material or an original graphic novel. Best Writer. Best Artist. Best Writer/Artist, that's one person who does both. Best Color Artist. Best Letterer. And Best and Breakthrough Talent of 2017, someone who rose to prominence as a comic book creator in that year. All right, to participate, you'll need to submit your ballot via email to a specially established email address for the purpose, bestof@comicgeekspeak.com, by 11:59 p.m. on Sunday, March 11th. So please nominate only one person, place, or thing, whatever the category calls for, per category, and please nominate something for at least half of the categories, at least 8 of the 16 categories. Otherwise, your nomination ballot will be considered incomplete and it will not be counted. The way this will work is that each of the participating geeks will nominate something in each category, and we will then sort through the listener voting, and whichever person, place, or thing in each category receives the most listener nominations will be the official listener nominee in that category. And in case that listener nominee coincides with one or more of the Geeks nominees, then we'll go to the second largest vote getter from the listeners. We'll just compile the complete final slate during a special nominations show coming up in 2 or 3 weeks. And after that, we will throw the voting back open to all of you to vote once again for the final winners in each category among your nominations and ours. So that's the CGS Best of 17 Awards. They're going on again this year. Please vote early, but don't vote often.
And I want to say, Mert, how wonderful it's been since you brought this installment back some years ago now, and something I look forward to every year. So thank you, sir.
Always a lot of fun, and I think everybody involved, including us, learn about some worthy comics of the past year that may have escaped our attention.
Absolutely.
All right. So now, household business taken care of. Let's get right down to the business of going through the previews catalog, starting as we usually do
Dark Horse.
at the Dark Horse section.
And right away on page 46, Xerxes, the Fall of the House of Darius and the Rise of Alexander. So Frank Miller, continuing his 300 story universe, is now addressing one of the most important military conquerors in human history, Alexander the Great. I'm definitely going to check this out. Although interesting, I'm interested to see how he applies the history, because as you know, Miller does play a little bit fast and loose with the history in these stories, which is, he's telling a story, so not everything's going to be exactly as it happened. What's interesting is that Xerxes was dead by the time Alexander the Great came on the scene.
So that's a pretty big liberty taken right there.
I want to say Alexander defeated, was it Darius III? He defeated another Persian emperor who also had the title Darius, but it was not Xerxes. So I'll be interested to see if Miller's going to kind of play fast and loose with the history there, but
as long as it's in the service of a good story.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check it out, because I really enjoyed 300. So,
yep. As Jamie used to say, never let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Amen, Brother D. Amen. Murr, I know you're excited about page 50.
Oh, of course, yes. The latest volume of Jeff Lemire's and Dean Ormston's superhero opus, Black Hammer: Age of Doom. Tale of superhero characters who, in post-Crisis on Infinite Earths fashion, were accidentally booted out of their reality at the end of a giant cosmic conflagration in battle with a dark side analog called the Anti-God, and the story of what happened to them afterwards as they find themselves stuck in this mysterious little bucolic Middle American pocket universe.
Yes.
So the latest volume is called Black Hammer: Age of Doom #1. It's a new #1, but it's a continuation of the main plot from earlier volumes of Black Hammer, and it may not be the best jumping on point for people who haven't read the other issues leading up to it.
No, get the trades of the first arcs, absolutely.
Oh yes, it was highly recommended by everyone here at CGS.
Oh, it's one of the best. I think it's one of the best titles on the stands, without question.
And this new #1, Age of Doom #1, is 50% off at DCBService.com.
On page 54, Neil Gaiman's A Study in Emerald hardcover. This supernatural mystery set in the world of Sherlock Holmes and Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos features a brilliant detective and his partner as they try to solve a horrific murder.
Yep. Originally a prose novel by Gaiman, but now adapted to comics form.
Gaiman, come on. What else does there need to be said?
With help from artist Raphael Albuquerque.
I like how, if you look on page 54, Mert, how the Cthulhu apparition looks, kind of reminds me of Man-Thing a little bit. The way it's rendered there.
Oh, yes, just the tentacular facial appendages there.
Indeed. What else you got for Dark Horse, my friend?
Not much else. I mean, there are a couple of other miniseries and ongoing series that I'm picking up, like the fourth issue of that Hungry Ghosts, written by Anthony Bourdain, a combination of folklore, ghost stories, and food stories. That there is, on page 67, a paperback collection of Larry Marder's Bean World story, a most peculiar comic book experience. It's a work of ecological fantasy. I remember once I had a little mini conversation with our longtime listener, Bill Dowdy, about the similarities between Bean World and Fraggle Rock. Jim Henson's Fraggle Rock, because both of those are kind of about the interconnectedness of different little tribes of fictional creatures and beasties, and the way they interact, and the peculiar little magical quasi-tribal rituals they observe. So Larry Marder basically created this quirky, silly little world occupied by these little scribbly bean creatures, which has real-world ecological lessons to tell. So, yeah, it is one of the better indie books of, say, the late 80s, early 90s.
Merge stamp of approval, ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely.
Page 70, another trade paperback installment in Michael Chabon's The Escapist, the superheroic character that was the creation of the characters in The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, that classic Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, which if you're a comic fan you have not read, don't think. Go to the library, go to Amazon, go to the bookstore, buy it immediately. Vital work, just a loving tribute to the golden age, that novel.
I should probably boot that to the top of my reading stack.
Oh, Murd, you haven't read it yet?
Well, I haven't read Pants's Private Eye by Brian K. Vaughan and Marcos Martin yet. That is next.
Excellent.
I just finished Ready Player One in anticipation of
I haven't
the
read
movie.
Ready Player One. How was it?
It's fun. It's kind of on the level of a young adult novel.
Okay.
But it's a fun treasure hunt story.
Excellent. Now, The Escapists, these are comic book stories about the character that's created in The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. And you've got, Howard Chaykin, Will Eisner, Matt Kint, Jeffrey Brown, Eduardo Barreto, Michael Chabon himself. So, highest recommendation. I wanted to look at page 74, EC Archives Weird Fantasy 3 hardcovers. So, Dark Horse is continuing to reprint the classic EC stories from the 1950s. Again, these names you should be having heart palpitations. Bill Gaines, Al Feldstein, Frank Frazetta, Wally Wood, Jack Kamen, Joe Orlando, Al Williams, Carlos Padilla. I mean, come on. These are some of the great masters of the medium. Again, working in that glorious pre-code era of the American comic book. Anything else for Dark Horse, my friend?
Not for me, Chris.
Well, we got to go to the obvious choice on page 82.
Oh,
the
yes.
DC section.
Make a beeline for that.
Yeah.
As Action Comics is making its landmark 1,000th issue. It's underneath a cover by Jim Lee, and it's an 80-page giant, $7.99 cover price, which, of course, is half off at dcbservice.com. And look at that list of talent. I mean, all new art and stories by, first off, Brian Michael Bendis, fresh off his release from his exclusive Marvel contract. He's now exclusive to DC. And he's going to be an important figure in Superman's creative future. So here he is getting to make his initial statement on the character in Action number 1000. We've also got John Cassaday, Olivier Coipel, Paul Dini, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez,
Peter's favorite,
Pat Gleason, Butch Geist, Jeff Johns, Dan Jurgens, Tom King. Jim Lee apparently doing something on the inside of the comic as well. Clay Mann, Brad Meltzer, Jerry Ordway, Tim Sale, Louise Simonson, Scott Snyder, the late Kurt Swan, who's been dead for over 20 years now.
An unpublished tale, apparently.
Yep, they found something in archives, which I'm looking forward to seeing. Peter J. Tomasi, Mr. Crisis himself, Marv Wolfman, and more. And they've also got a bunch of variant covers available by people like Steve Rude, Michael Cho, Dave Gibbons, Mike Allred, Steranko, Joshua Middleton, Dan Jurgens, Lee Bermejo.
And each one is capturing a different decade of Superman's visual history, so to speak.
Wow. How does one choose?
Rest assured, we'll be discussing this book on the air.
Yes, that seems, I mean, we're kind of out of the off-the-rack habit, but I think we may make an exception for this one.
Hell yeah. Murd, I want to ask you, page 84, you mentioned your love of the Damage character. Mm-hmm. This is a different version, though, right?
No relation, Chris.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right. So, I know you lamented the passing of that character.
Yep, it's basically Tangent Damage, but in the post-Flashpoint DCU. I
wanted to point out, I've mentioned before, and I'll mention it again, on page 89, how much I'm enjoying Dan Abnett's Aquaman. A long-running story about Aquaman has lost the throne and how he's trying to fight to reclaim it, or at least wrest it from the hands of the usurper who has taken control. Fascinating study of sort of the societal tiers of Atlantis, so to speak, and how he's trying to navigate that. It's a comic I look forward to every month. And I got to say, since the New 52, I've been consistently enjoying Aquaman, just the way they've been relaying that character's story. So I highly recommend that series.
Well, happy to hear that Abnett is working hard to analyze the Atlantean social structure.
He is. It's very interesting. Okay, I gotta. Oh wait, not this page. I'm sorry, Murd. You constantly want to vamp on. I'm looking for something else, but
all right. Well, it does seem to be kind of a while before I come across something else. Here we go, page 110. Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, numbers 42 and 43. It's beginning a new story arc called Darkest Before the Dawn, and the cover image shown here for number 42 reveals that the Dark Stars are making their way back to the Rebirth DC universe. The Dark Stars are a concept from the 90s when I began reading comic books.
Yes.
And they were introduced as kind of a rival law enforcement group to the Green Lantern Corps, founded by the Guardians' evolutionary cousins, the Controllers. And now apparently there's going to be a new millennial take on them here in the Rebirth DC universe. And I'm going to at least give that a look.
Jumping back to page 105, this is on the cover of the previews. Deathstroke number 30, Deathstroke versus Batman, Part 1. And then, written by the ongoing Deathstroke writer, Christopher Priest. Enough said. I cannot wait to read this. Covers by Lee Weeks. Art by Carlo, I'm going to butcher this, I apologize.
Pagulayan, I think?
Pagulayan. Come on. Christopher Priest doing Deathstroke versus Batman?
Yep.
I mean, what else do you have to say?
To sweeten the pot, it's kind of a superhero paternity suit here because it turns out Damian Wayne might not be Bruce Wayne's actual biological child. He might be Deathstroke's.
Great narrative conceit. Yeah. Can't wait.
I kind of hope that's they don't do that retcon and give the kid to Deathstroke because the idea of Batman having a son is something that I think comics need. I mean, it's a way for Batman to grow up a little bit.
I agree. But although I have great faith in Priest, we'll see how he addresses the story. But Priest is writing Justice League now. I just read the latest issue of that. Really entertaining. I'm so glad to see that DC is throwing a lot of work his way.
Me too. And I am buying his run on Justice League as well.
On page 115, once again, one of the most important superhero comics being made today, is, as far as I'm concerned, is Mr. Miracle by Tom King. Art by Mitch, is it Gerads?
I would have said Jared's.
Okay.
Just like Gerald's without the L. But Eric Nolan Wethington, as usual, will
Mr.
come
Wethington,
charging in.
I've already shut off our emergency flare with the CGS logo, seeking your reinforcement, sir. Thank you.
He just told me how to pronounce Rick Burchett's name.
I saw that, yeah. But Mr. Miracle, Tom King's doing what he did for The Vision, that groundbreaking miniseries from about a year ago. He's just revisiting the Mr. Miracle character, not changing anything about his past, but just, again, applying an innovative approach to that character's arc. This is gripping comics, ladies and gentlemen. It's a character maybe you didn't think much of before, know much about, but rest assured, once again, Tom King is one of the top writers in comics as far as I'm concerned, and he definitely shows his chops here with this book. This is one of the books I look forward to the most each month, Mr. Miracle.
Oh, page 120. I had my eye on this storyline anyway.
Oh,
the first two
is built for you.
parts are due to ship in March, but the Superman number 44 and 45 on page 120, the parts 3 and 4 and final of the Boy-Zorro Redeath, in which we are introduced to the Bizarro version of the current Superboy, the biological son of the pre-Flashpoint Superman. And now I guess these are people coming in not so much from the Bizarro world as from the Bizarro verse, which is a universe in the current multiverse, the 52 Earth multiverse, which is given over to Bizarro versions of everything and everyone in the DC universe. And not only is it a epic Bizarro story, it apparently involves Bizarro Super Friends characters. Come on, all you children of the 70s and 80s. You got to check this storyline out.
God, talk about a book built for Murd. Holy mackerel.
Tell me about it.
I notice on page 131, Future Quest presents number 9, Herculoids. Looks immensely fun.
Mm-hmm. That series has written. Oh, it's not written by Jeff Parker this time, though. I guess it's more. This Future Quest Presents is taking more of an anthology approach, it seems, with rotating creative teams. So Rob Williams and Aaron Lopresti. But yeah, it continues to do great things for those venerable old 1960s Hanna-Barbera action concepts.
And on page 132, Charlie Fish continuing his wonderful run on Scooby-Doo Team Up, number 37. Supergirl.
And Streaky the Super Cat.
Yes.
Meeting the Scooby Gang. Yep, definitely going to buy that.
What else for DCU, my friend?
Well, nothing else as far as monthly books. Any trades or hardcovers that caught your eye, Chris?
Not Well, you have on page 140, they're reissuing the Absolute Kingdom Come hardcover new edition. So the Absolute editions are DC's version of the Marvel omnibuses, deluxe hardcover, high quality reprintings of classic stories. And I mean, Kingdom Come's, it's a classic. So if you've never read it, or if you loved it and you want to own it in a pristine, high end format, there you go.
Yep, larger than the average too.
Yes.
8 1/4 by 12 1/2, so big, beautiful pages to showcase that Alex
And
Ross
then we
art.
have next to it Batman by Grant Morrison Omnibus, Volume 1, collecting Batman 655 to 658 and 663 to 683.
Matt would not approve, but I do.
And on the next page, the Batman 66 Omnibus hardcover. So it collects The Lost Episode, which was the one by, I think, Harlan Ellison wrote it, with Two-Face.
Oh, yes, the Lost
Yeah.
Episode, right.
Yep. And then issues 1 through 30, and a story from Solo number 7. So that's a hell of a collection right there. Fantastic Mike Allred covers. Beautiful stuff.
Page 142, Batman and the Brave and the Bold, the Bronze Age Omnibus, Volume 2
Haney,
hardcover.
the Haney universe.
Yep. Hey, it's Earth B, and it's issues number 110 to 156. Given that was bi-monthly for a time, that's over 4 years worth of Batman team-up stories from the 70s. And if I didn't already own over half of the content, I might be tempted. And at the bottom, you've got, speaking of adaptations of classic cartoons, Dastardly and Muttley trade paperback,
Ennis.
as written by Garth Ennis, yes. Very different take on Dick Dastardly and his sidekick Muttley. For example, Muttley used to be human and was just mutated into that dog thing by exposure to a radioactive element. So, the usual twisted Ennis twists being thrown at that Hanna-Barbera classic.
Can't wait. Page 144, always a perennial favorite, JLA Year 1 by Wade and Augustin, now being reprinted in a new trade paperback edition. If you've never read this story, it's Wade's take on the beginnings of the Justice League, but with the team without Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman. So it's Aquaman, Green Lantern, Flash, Black Canary, and Martian Manhunter. This is one of my all-time favorite sort of, quote, origin stories, so to speak. It's Wade at just the top of his form, and he and Augustin are a wonderful team. I highly recommend this story. It's at $29.99. It's worth it. It collects all 12 issues.
Giving these classic characters a heck of a lot more depth and detail than they were allowed to have in the Silver Age.
Exactly.
And the Kitson art is very attractive.
That's right. I'm sorry. Wade and Augustin were the co-writers. I apologize. Kitson was there. And I was thinking of Wade and Kitson as that team. They did the wonderful work on the book Empire, both for Guerrilla Comics and then DC. The opposite page, well, it never gets old, does it? The Judas Contract is part of the New Teen Titans Omnibus Volume 3, a new edition of that omnibus series. This is the classic Wolfman Perez. I mean, no one speaks better this than our glorious co-founder, Peter Rios.
He had his own podcast on just that subject,
Which is still
Titans
available
Tower.
on the CGS site. So definitely check that out. I want to comment on how much I loved, I mentioned this before, Nightwing the New Order, which is collected in trade paperback below that, again on page 145. It's not called an Elseworld, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
And this is riveting. The premise is that Dick Grayson felt, due to a variety of circumstances, that superheroes had to be depowered for the sake of sort of law and order and stability. And he leads a government initiative to do that. And it's years later, he has a son, and now he deals with the consequences of his decision. And there are still some heroes who have gone underground and still have their powers. Gripping. It's by Kyle Higgins, a writer who is yet to disappoint me in any way. And I hope we'll see more and more of his work in the years to come. He, of course, did Cal and Hadrian's Wall. Page 147. Superman the Golden Age, Volume 4. Siegel and Schuster. I mean, come on.
Yep. Celebrate the Man of Steel's roots as he celebrates his 1,000th issue and his 80th anniversary in comics this year.
Murd, I wanted to point out on page 149, I just picked up and read Astro City 50 because I know it dealt with the character from the classic The Nearness of You.
Right.
Did you read 50 yet?
He's founded his own support group
Yeah.
for people who have been victims of superhero
I was so
activity.
moved by it because I love that half issue of The Nearness of You, which came out years ago.
It was a special Wizard magazine
And I'm
promotional.
so thrilled Busick has returned to it. I have been reading Astro City consistently for quite some time. I read it consistently the first several years it came out. kind of through the Dark Age. But it's one of the best comics produced consistently, I think. What is it, 20 years now?
Yeah, more than that, in fact.
Yeah, I mean, and Kurt Busiek doesn't get the play he used to in terms of publicity and press, but he's still one of the greatest writers in comics. I mean, just the heartfelt emotion of these stories and how, again, he shows the consequences for everyday people living in this world of heroes, which no one does better than Busiek.
Oh, yes,
as far
the
as I'm
depth of
concerned.
thought he puts into all of his
Yep.
characters and ideas, unmatched. On page 148 also, there's a new hardcover collection of 0 Hour, Crisis in Time, Crisis on Infinite Earth's Awkward Little Brother, which not quite as good a story or as impactful as Crisis on Infinite Earths, but it has a certain appeal all its own. It was from 1994. Give it a read for the sake of 90s nostalgia, if nothing else.
And on page 152, if you have the money, and if you're a fan, you can get a new Teen Titans Starfire and Robin as part of a multi-part statue set, which recreates the classic cover to New Teen Titans #1 by Wolfman and Perez. So that's a nice set right there. But again, each statue is $80. So
And I have only so many horizontal surfaces in my apartment, and most of them are covered with comic books.
I get to see your pad. I gotta see that one day.
Yeah, it's really more depressing than anything else.
On that grim note, let's move on to IDW.
IDW, yeah. Which is the new home of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Their licensing steamroller continues.
Oh, indeed. They've been making great inroads
Yeah.
through in the licensed comics world. Sonic the Hedgehog, after a long run at Archie Comics, has now landed at IDW, but it's brought some of its signature talent with it. Ian Flynn as the writer. Tracy Yardley has been like one of the premier Sonic artists over the past 20 years. And also a few others helping out with this weekly 4-issue relaunch at IDW over the course of the month of April. And the first issue is 50% off at DCBService.com. Yes, do not type that into your location finder incorrectly.
What else for IDW strikes your eye, my friend?
Let's see, on page 161, just as a pony report, Princess Celestia pulls a Prince and the Pauper thing here, or maybe an Odin. She's one of the rulers of the land of Equestria, and she disguises herself as a common pony to go about the common folk, in a story written by Tom Zoller, who's a friend of the show, and artist Andy Price.
And you're still enjoying that book monthly,
Oh,
correct?
sure. I'm enjoying the cartoon show on which it's based as well. But yes, I do buy that series monthly. And Andy Price was the original artist and still the most regular contributor to that series.
On page 166, the Samurai Jack property, get the trade paperback. I love this cartoon when it first came out. I remember really eating that up. So Jack is back. It's a brand new adventure that sees Jack exploring alternate universes, each with a different take on the wandering samurai. Did you ever watch that show?
I watched it a few times when I was in college.
Okay.
Honestly,
Didn't grab you.
Yeah, visually, I mean, the design of the dystopian world that this time-tossed samurai warrior finds himself in, it's very well designed. It looked
yeah.
great, but story-wise, it never grabbed me.
Fair enough. Of course, IDW continues with Rom and the Micronauts. On page 176, G.I. Joe. On page 177, Larry Hama, the legend, continues his G.I. Joe series with the Marvel numbering, now just under the IDW imprint. G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue 251. Fantastic.
Wow. Is that 200? No, that's the Marvel numbering.
Yes,
you said.
it's Marvel numbering. It's
About to say, I
Hama's
didn't
vision.
think IDW had the license quite that long.
Yeah. We've got, I think it's an OGN, 8 Million Ways to Die. In crime ravaged 1980s New York, a troubled ex-cop turned unlicensed detective takes on his most dangerous case, hunting down a serial killer hitman and ultimately coming face-to-face with his deadliest enemy himself. Adaptation of the celebrated story by Lawrence Block.
What page is that on?
Page 180. Lawrence Block, he's a famous crime novelist, so they're adopting one of his stories here. Visually looks fantastic. All right. What else for IDW, my friend?
I think there is nothing else for me from IDW.
Again, if you love licensed properties, IDW is the place to go. I should point out on page 194, Jack Kirby's Marvel Stories Artist Edition. A collection of beautiful stories featuring some of King Kirby's most iconic and enduring heroes: Captain America, the X-Men, Ant-Man, and Sergeant Fury. And let's see, and also monster stories as well. A Monster at My Window. $150 for 68 pages. Again, I've had to give a buy on these since I closed my shop. I just can't afford them. But if you have the money, these are well worth it. They are just, as Pantsui says, the closest you're going to get to owning because the artwork for these stories is beyond most people's pocketbook. The closer you can get to owning that original art.
Even though it's black and white, it's photographed with color film or with color settings if it's done digitally, just to preserve the original color and texture of the paper.
Indeed.
Added detail.
All right, Image.
Image, all right. An Image on page 198 and 9 is leading off with a new series from Jerry Duggan, a writer who has worked at Marvel on various series such as Deadpool, and Analog, in common with the Private Eye graphic novel by Brian K. Vaughan we mentioned earlier, is speculative fiction about a future world in which privacy is all but dead and web security is a thing of the past. And for the really sensitive secrets to be carried from place to place, they must be entrusted to meat couriers. Just the ledger men, they're called, flesh and blood human beings who actually carry briefcases full of secrets from place to place. One such briefcase is incorporated in the logo. So this,
I like the concept.
Yeah, it appeals to me in the same way that I'm sure the Private Eye concept will appeal to me as soon as I read it. And it's the first issue is 50% off at DCB service, so I'm going to gamble and give that one a try.
Murd, I will join you in that. We'll discuss it.
Excellent.
Now, Image, of course, always has a series of number ones. You always have to applaud again, Image has the most diverse array of titles. Basically, when I think of Image Comics today, I think of the way comics were in the Golden Age, the Atom Age. We had just an incredible variety of genres on the newsstand.
Relentless innovation.
Yes, and I want to point out on page 204, I mentioned Kyle Higgins before. He has a new book out, The Dead Hand, number 1. Cold War Relics Part 1. Carter Carlos was a highly decorated operative during the Cold War. But in the fall of 91, as the Soviet Union collapsed, Carter discovered a secret that not only changed his life, but also altered the course of history. Now as the mysterious Dead Hand, end quote, threatens to end the world once again, the only thing standing in his way is the relationship between an old spy and a little boy. It's Kyle Higgins doing espionage. I'm getting it. I mean, he is yet to write something I haven't enjoyed. So, very much looking forward to that.
Still wish he'd give us a little more Cowl to read, because that's
Cowl was so good.
My favorite work of his to date.
Yeah. What else from Image, my friend?
Well, once again, I think the nice thing about Image is that they sort of front load all the new series releases to the front of their solicitation section of the catalog. So moving towards the back, then we just kind of get continuing series. Like the second issue of the new Jeff Lemire series, Gideon Falls, is on page 226.
Which I'll be trying.
Yes, quirky new sort of supernatural mystery and horror series, The Ice Cream Man, is on page 227. A little bit like Tales from the Dark Side, like the Joe Hill reimagination there. I mean, that it's a bunch of horror short stories, but they all have a common thread.
Well, page 230 is one of the reasons why I still read comics. You've got two of the best titles out today by some of the greatest creators in the medium. Killer Be Killed by Brubaker and Phillips and Breitweiser, and then, of course, Lazarus returning after hiatus by Greg Ruck and Michael Lark. Enough said. I mean, Killer Be Killed, again, is the classic Brubaker, Phillips, and Breitweiser's take on the vigilante concept. Lazarus, which it seems he's moving also towards television, from what I've been reading. Again, a dystopian future where corporations have basically superseded countries as family-owned corporations as the rulers of the planet, and their conflicts and intrigues. Lazarus, for me, is one of the best comics of the past several years. I always praise it. I can't recommend both these books highly enough. And then the next page, Mage. I've been loving this. Matt Wagner's final installment of his long-running classic Kevin Matchstick character. Again, if you haven't read this, go back to The Hero Discovered and then the Hero Defined. Can't go wrong with that. Page 232, Moonshine. Brian Azzarello, Eduardo Rizzo, who from 100 Bullets. Werewolves and Prohibition. Enough said. Immensely fun.
Yep. I do have the first trade, which, as per Image
$9.99, right?
Yeah, but yes,
Yeah.
by Image SOP. It was affordable. And I'm saving it for Halloween, though.
I think you'll enjoy it. Page 230 to 39, the best book in comics, Saga 51. That continues. Again, if you haven't read it, as Merg just said, get the first trade, $9.99. You'll most likely be buying the rest shortly thereafter. Page 241, Sex Criminals, another Image's Tops books by Fraction Zdarsky. I'm really enjoying it. We'll talk about this in a future episode. Zdarsky is currently writing Marvel 2-in-1, but The Thing and the Human Torch, in the absence of Reed and Sue since the Secret War storyline. It's no pun intended. It's fantastic. Have you been reading that?
Well, I've been picking it up.
Okay, you haven't read it yet. Okay,
Yep, haven't even flipped through it yet.
fair enough. I know maybe 10 years from now, but
Or 15.
fair enough. But I'm enjoying that. What else for Image, my friend?
I don't believe I have anything else to mention.
Marvel it is.
All right.
Now, Merg, we mentioned that we're both going to be trying Infinity Countdown, which is Gary Duncan. You mentioned him. Is it Jerry or Gary?
I think it's Jerry.
Okay, you mentioned him before. He's writing this story, and anything involving the Infinity Gems, and they're calling them stones now, of course, to tie into the movies.
Yes, and even scrambling the color scheme around to coincide with the color of the gems in the movie. You see, that's... somebody, his name was Steven. He posted something to the CGS forums taking issue with my... whatever problem I happen to have with the gems versus the stones. I just wanted to reassure him and anyone else listening that it's not that I'm unfamiliar with the concept of synonyms here. I realize that gems and stones are much the same thing.
Right.
It's really... My problem is just that I don't like seeing treatment of comic book subjects in other media coming back and feeding back into and overwriting what was already established in the comics. I have no problem with concepts from other media informing what's going on in the comics. That's how we got Jimmy Olsen and Kryptonite, to use a very old example. But I don't want to see the comic books just altering themselves and their established...
Unfortunately,
the established lore, of course.
Unfortunately, I think that's become the norm now.
Yeah, and this the Infinity Gems they're what got me into comics. They're one of my favorite concepts in all of comics. I don't want to see them dancing to the filmmaker's tune here. So that's my problem.
Alas, that waltz has long begun. Go back to Hawkeye's costume, for example.
Yeah. And I can't find anybody to tap me on the shoulder and let me go sit down.
God, I love you. Page 3, The Hunt for Wolverine by Charles Soule, outstanding writer, David Marquez art. So they're bringing back let's call him the younger Logan, the traditional Wolverine, rather than the old man Logan who's been running around the Marvel Universe in recent years. And he's been popping up now in different Marvel comics. They have little sigils saying, like, where's Wolverine? Meaning he'll appear in that issue briefly. So they're building that up. I'm very excited for Captain America 700. I am loving Wade's run. Well, it's the Wade Somni team. I mean,
Right.
God.
And this arc just began this past week, actually. Number 698 just
I just got it. I haven't read it yet.
And so it's more Cap in a strange new world.
Yeah, so we just had that with... who was the writer?
Rick Remender.
Rick Remender,
Yeah,
right.
Cap in Dimension
Yes,
Z.
yes. So looks like, based on this cover, we're going to have Thing, Hulk. Is that Black Widow? Maybe. And various other... There's an anthropomorphic dog there, it looks like. But what I'm also excited about, Mark Waid delivers an untold tale from Captain America's past, featuring the classic artwork of Jack Kirby. Immediately.
That is something to be excited about.
Number 7, page 7, the Exiles are returning.
Yeah, really odd assortment of characters here. I mean, we've got an older, alternate future Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan. We've got the Age of Apocalypse's Blink, who was a founding member of the Exiles when Judd Winnick first began the team back in 2001. You've got Iron Lad from Young Avengers. It's making her Marvel Universe debut, crossing over from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Tessa Thompson's Valkyrie character.
And then we have the,
Chris Giarrusso's Mini Marvel's
Wolverine. All right.
So, a lot of strange goings-on there, brought to you by writer Saladin Ahmed, who apparently wrote a Black Bolt miniseries.
Which I have not read.
Not long ago. But he's a published science fiction writer, I'm told, and some people I trust him. So, those of you who want to give that a try, it's 50% off at dcbservice.com.
Page 9, Domino number 1, Gail Simone. taking on that character.
Yep, I'm in right away, as you like to say, Chris.
Yeah.
Yes, Gail. I'll trust her on just about any character
Yep.
she writes.
Here, here. Let's see. Again, a lot of continue. You know what I'm lamenting is I didn't get in on the ground floor of the ongoing weekly Avengers epic.
Oh yes, No Surrender.
Yeah, and I could probably track down a lot of the back issues.
Now there will be a lot of them by the time we're done.
I may just wait for whatever monster-sized trade they release because
It'll probably be a couple.
yeah, I mean it's Mark Waid's one of the writers. I definitely want to read this. It's just I just dropped the ball and I didn't start with it. So, but that looks really fun.
Yeah, and it is wrapping up in the month of April with Avengers number 690. That's on page 17. It's 16 parts all told.
Page 24, Invincible Iron Man 599. Tony's back. So I'll definitely. I'm picking up the last few issues just so they make the build up to 600. Again, I think of our dear departed comrade Jamie D. Always loved those anniversary issues. Thor 706 at the gates of Valhalla. All right, so it seems that Jane Foster's not going to survive her tenure as Thor. That remains to be seen. And the characters, her human character is dying of cancer. Again, and I know Pants would echo this. This Aaron's run on Thor is a classic. I mean, both the Odin Son Thor and now the Jane Foster Thor. One of the top titles Marvel is producing, without question. All right, Amazing Spider-Man, page 30, Slott's last run. I'm picking the book up again because I fell off Spider-Man for quite a while when he was one of my all-time favorite characters. Although that's nothing against Slott; he's a fantastic writer. But the Green Goblin has returned, and I'm in. It's Slott and Immonen, so I'm going to see where they're going to go with this.
Yeah, I think I would like to jump back on here at the end of Slott's run just to see how it all concludes. It looks like a 5-part story, this Go Down Swinging, introducing the Red Goblin, who seems to, based on the Alex Ross cover to number 799, seems to be kind of a demonic entity. Another demon goblin.
Page 41, Daredevil 601, Charles Soule. I'm jumping back into this book on page. I love the Daredevil characters, many listeners know, but I kind of fell off it when Soule took over. But I know that Wilson Fisk is now the mayor of New York City. So I'm interested to see where they're going with that, and Matt Murdock's seemingly never-ending campaign against him. Again, page 43, Todd Coates is doing outstanding work on the Black Panther character. Again, his take on the world of Wakanda and the different challenges T'Challa faces both as king and hero. So that's been a consistently outstanding series. Coates really getting into the politics of Wakanda, the different tribes. And the whole crux of his story is that they want to move Wakanda away from a monarchy to more of a democratic type society, although still retaining the throne, like a constitutional monarchy, and that's been very interesting. Well, Murray, we've got Thanos on page 50 and 51.
Imagine that.
Thanos Annual 1.
Featuring Cosmic Ghost Rider, who's apparently become a supporting member of the cast since Donny Cates took over as writer.
And I have not read the Donny Cates stuff. I know some people told me Donny Cates does great work, so I have to give it a try. But I have to say, though, I went into a local comic shop this past week because there's a couple books I missed from my order that I wanted to read. And so I went and I bought 2 books. Spent over $8 buying 2 comic books. So it's harder and harder to justify adding more and more titles when, it's just too much money.
When they're $8 a piece. Yeah.
Well, 2 books were $8, when all was said and done.
Yeah, $4 a piece.
Anyway. Yeah, so I may not be able to jump back into Thanos just for financial reasons.
Well, while we're on the subject of the rising cover cost of comics, I did want to point out that on DCBService.com, I can't point you to a particular page in the Marvel Previews book since I don't know where it's shown, but at DCBService.com you can find some True Believers issues at Marvel's, but that's their budget program.
I've seen some of those.
It's like $1 cover
They're famous
price.
reprints, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a nice idea.
And coinciding with all this Thanos, they're actually reprinting a bunch of key Thanos issues, including his first appearance, plus Marvel Superheroes number 13, the first appearance of Carol Danvers.
Nice.
All for $1, but if you get them through DCBService.com, they're 60 cents.
And that's a good move on Marvel's part because there's a reprint. So they've already made their money a gazillion times over, so they can release them at very low cost. It's a great way to catch up on Marvel history. I wanted to point out on page 70, all new, all ages series, Marvel Super Adventures. I love when they do a lot of police activity out there, I'm hearing. I love when they do these books for all. We mentioned Chris G. Russo, his wonderful mini Marvels from some years back, which my younger son, Jun, read that trade till it was completely almost in tatters. I love when they have the all ages books as a way for a younger reader to gain access to this world.
Yep, art by Dario Brizuela, who I believe is also the artist on Scooby-Doo Team Up. And you know, Jamie D valued stuff like this, too.
Yes.
Not only for his nieces and nephew, but I think for himself, too.
Absolutely. Page 74, again, Marvel's wonderful Star Wars stories continue to consistently deliver. The Thrawn miniseries, I want to read the book first by the great Timothy Zahn before I give this a try. Thrawn is just a fascinating character in the Star Wars universe. Charles Soule's knocking out of the park with the Darth Vader book. That's been wonderful. Again, exploring the conflicts of Vader, the ramifications of his decisions as he hunts down the remaining Jedi.
Looks like he's Vader underwater in this one.
Indeed.
He's going on a mission to Mon Calamari, which, interestingly, is also where C-3PO is in Star Wars number 46 the same month. I don't know if that's an official crossover, but if not, it's a heck of a coincidence.
Page 83 into the trades, the Dark Phoenix Saga Omnibus hardcover. Now, they're coming out with a movie where they're going to... I read an article where I got the sense that they wanted to kind of revisit the concept because they felt they didn't do it justice in the third X-Men film, and yeah, you certainly didn't.
Yeah, the third X-Men film didn't do justice to much of anything, except possibly Kitty
Well, the
Pryde.
director was probably busy bullying and groping people, but anyway.
Yeah, I've heard that about Ratner.
Sorry, little editorial caveat there. This is a... It's still... I read this... I decided to read this like once a year, this story. It's still one of the greatest superhero sagas I've ever read in my life. I treasure it. Just the sheer emotion of it. I mean, between the characters, especially Jean and Scott, and just the stakes in the story are literally cosmic.
Yep, uncommon in comics of the time.
Yeah, it's still... I consider it... I think this is still a very accessible story that should be read if you haven't read it and you're a fan of the medium. So that collects everything, plus Phoenix the Untold story, which is what the alternate ending they didn't use. All the great Claremont Bolton supplemental stories from Classic X-Men. The Bizarre Adventures Magazine 27, which is another Jean Grey Phoenix story. The What If 27. Classics, each and every one.
I have that issue of Bizarre Adventures. It's Jean and her sister.
That's correct.
Well, her sister reminiscing about Jean after her death.
Yes.
And remembering a time years earlier when they'd both been kidnapped by Atuma down to Atlantis to act as like
and I think Jean
broodmares for
rearranges
Atlantean.
her sister's molecules to save her or something like that. So it's good stuff.
Yep. And if you do pick it up and read it, please go to comicgeekspeak.com and search for our Book of the Month episode about that story from years ago.
Page 88, 89. It's Ant-Man and the Wasp are getting their film, which I'm really looking forward to seeing, by the way, this summer.
I'm sure I will enjoy it more than the original Ant-Man.
Yep. Color your own Ant-Man and the Wasp. Jack Kirby cover. They've got a Prelude trade paperback. The trailer looks so much fun. I'm really looking forward to that film. That's this July, I believe. And then we've got a variety of trades of all like the latest series.
Page 94. If you'd like a little primer before you pick up Gail Simone's new Domino series, there is a Domino trade paperback of some key Domino stories from various series, including both of her miniseries from the late 90s and early 2000s by Ben Robb and Joe Pruitt and Brian Stelfreeze, respectively. Neither one of those really grabbed me, although I did buy and read both of them. I'm sure Gail Simone's take on the character will surpass them both.
Most likely. I wanted to point out, seeing some Black Panther trades, I'm so excited this coming week that the Black Panther annual is shipping. They've got stories by Don McGregor and Christopher Priest, but both revisiting the character they helped establish. And in our previous episode, we critiqued the film, and I made a point of mentioning more than once how the movie is basically those two men's Black Panther stories, essentially. So I'm really looking forward to this annual. I'll be sure to talk about it on the air. Murd and Forts, I have to depart at this point.
Do you have a lightning round of back of the book picks that you'd like to mention in a hurry?
Well, I wanted to mention, and when Hans comes back, I want to talk about this in more detail. On page 256, The Return of Strangers in Paradise by the great living master Terry Moore. The first issue, talk about coming home. I almost got teary. It was so goddamn good. And he just, he just jumps right back in, and you're right back with those characters you come to know and love over that legendary run. And again, if you've not read Strangers in Paradise, and I'm going to channel Jamie D here, get out there and give that book a shot. Like, get all the pocket digests that are out there. To me, it's one of the all-time great series in the American comic book medium. Were you going to say something, Mert? I'm sorry.
No. Please continue.
Let's see. Not a whole heck of a lot to say in terms of lightning rounds. Unfortunately, as soon as I close my store, I can't read as much as I used to because I just don't have the time or the money to read as many books. I have to be a little more choosy in what I'm getting.
I understand.
I'm consistently reading Dynamite's James Bond property. That's been wonderful. I've really been enjoying that. They capture that character and his world and the brutality of his world very well. I want to point out on page 315.
The Killer?
I'm getting this.
Oh.
$40. I know Brian Deemer always trumpeted this book. It's a European comic. It's all about the life of a hitman and the impact of that life on his private life and how he tries to navigate this world. It is one of the most gripping crime comics I've ever read. And this is the whole story. So if you want to check it out, it's $40 before the inevitable DCB service discount. I highly recommend this book. If you love crime noir, for example, definitely pick up The Killer. It's him narrating his whole life and the jobs he takes, and it's chilling because he's a cold-blooded killer, like as the title goes. But it's written in such a way that you kind of root for him in a way. It's an outstanding book. If Matt were here, he would be pillaring the Shadow Batman story on page 342, which I know he was not a fan of. I did not read that myself.
That's not the Scott Snyder one though. That's
no, it's a subsequent one.
Yes, by Steve Orlando.
And before I leave, I can't leave without mentioning Tomorrow's, because who does a better job of capturing the history of this medium we all love? Back issue 104, The Fourth World After Kirby. So it endures the legacy of Jack Kirby's DC characters. Immediately. Definitely picking that baby up. And then we've got a lot of Offered Again, Alter Ego 149, about Gil Kane. That's a great issue. I have that one. Comic Book Creator 72, Joe Staton, who was a guest at one of our CGS Super shows, actually.
Oh, yes, and a true gentleman.
Indeed he was. He is, I should say. Again, Tomorrow's, they got a whole page on 440, a lot of Offered Again, John Romita, all that jazz. That's a great collection. I own that. The American Comic Book Chronicles, 1965 to 69. That's the Chronicles books, if you really want to dig deep into the history of the medium in particular eras and its impact on popular culture, vice versa, definitely pick up those books. Highest recommendation. And Mert, at that point, I must bid you a fond farewell, brother.
There is one thing I wanted to make sure you noticed before
Please.
you left, though, Chris. Back in the Boom Studios section on page 308, there is a new RoboCop series coming out. Please note the writer.
Oh, Mert, clutch.
Brian Wood writing RoboCop.
Yep.
And it's 50% off at DCBService.com.
We'll definitely be trying that one.
Yep, that's a property for which I've never had much use, but
I love the original film.
In his hands, it's bound to be deft science fiction satire.
Definitely checking that out.
All right, Chris. Well, I'm sorry you have to depart so soon, but
I got to make the long trip back. I got to pick up my son at a late ending birthday party. So we'll see you next time, brother.
All right. And so, having bid Chris a fond adieu and sent him on his way back home to northern New Jersey. Safe travels, brother. I'm afraid you're stuck with me as a sole commentator and highlighter of the back of the previews catalog, all the all the smaller publishers, we'll call them. I'm sorry, you're kind of at the mercy of my own personal tastes and inclinations and priorities here, but I'm going to do my best to be even-handed about the things that I'm talking about here. First thing I've got in the back of the book is on page 266 under the Aftershock Comics section. A new series from writer Cullen Bunn and artist Mirko Kolak. The Brothers Dracul, #1. Adventures of young Vlad Tepes, later to be known as Count Dracula, and his brother Radu when they were teenagers, before the vampirism ever started. And it appears to have some kind of at least loose grounding in historical fact. It involves the two of them stuck amidst the horrors of war as their native region of Eastern Europe is overrun by the Ottoman Empire. So some interesting para-supernatural drama going on there from Cullen Bunn, who's shown himself to be one of the more skilled and prolific writers in the medium right now, putting out a lot of material for several different publishers, and most of it pretty readable and innovative stuff. Oh, now on page 300, we've got a new volume of Copra. Copra Round 5 from creator Michel Fif and his Bergen Street Press. And Copra is, it's basically an independent comic, slightly absurdist riff on the concept of John Ostrander's Suicide Squad. There's clear analogs to a bunch of familiar DC characters in there. It's got its version of Boomerang, its version of Deadshot, etc. And even some analogs to Doctor Strange and the Punisher, and a few non-DC characters thrown in there for good measure. And it's just Michel Fif's little highly stylized and idiosyncratic take on Ostrander's take on the Suicide Squad, which Fif apparently remembers fondly from the 80s. It's a very peculiar creative style he brings to the idea. It's basically a fever dream of the Suicide Squad from the 80s teaming up with a few Marvel characters to beat Morrison's Brotherhood of Dada, or at least so goes the second volume. The characters of which you can see on the cover of Round 2 here on page 300 of the catalog. I do recommend it. I met Fif in person at Heroes Con maybe 2 years ago. I was able to buy a couple volumes from him in person. If you're any kind of fan of the 80s Suicide Squad comics, it's something you should probably try, because it's his way of carrying forward Ostrander's vision into the 21st century. Much better than the DC film did, I might add. All right, then moving along here to Boom Studios. I did mention to Chris before he left so that he could be alerted of the fact Brian Wood is writing a RoboCop series for Boom. It's called RoboCop Citizen's Arrest. First issue is listed on page 308. The original RoboCop movie is a little too over the top for my tastes, but it if you can get past the brutality of it all, the over-the-top ultra-violence of it, it was an 80s, what I like to call a sci-fi burlesque, a very broad and coarse parody, or satire is a better word, satire of the excesses, the social mores and cultural and economic foibles, the over-the-top corporate culture of the time. But it was a very 80s movie, and what that RoboCop movie did for its time period, certainly Brian Wood will be only too happy to do for the 21st century, like the 20-teens, in this new RoboCop volume that he's doing for comics. He's a writer who can be trusted to deliver something that's very true to the spirit of the original RoboCop, but transposed onto a new era. Even though I don't much care for RoboCop, I may actually give that a try just because of who's writing it. Plus, as I said before, it's 50% off at dcbservice.com. And speaking of 50% off at dcbservice.com, on page 338, from Dynamite, you've got the first issue of a new pirate series. Appears to be a space pirate series. Swashbucklers, The Saga Continues, #1, written by Mark Guggenheim, art by Andrea Mutti. And that, too, is 50% off at dcbservice.com. And only thing other than that I'm getting from Dynamite this month is on page 345, the 4th issue of a 6-issue Battlestar Galactica versus Battlestar Galactica miniseries, written by Peter David. It's a clash of the original 1978 TV series continuity and the newer Sci-Fi Channel BSG continuity, brought to you by Peter David, one of the most solid writers of licensed comics and any other comics working in the medium today. Now, on page 372, an indie book that I have been enjoying quite a bit lately, actually. It's from Hero Tomorrow Comics, and it is called Apama, the Undiscovered Animal. I know that I've mentioned it on the show before. Previously available digital first and only in print in trade paperback form. They published 2 volumes of digital first Apama issues. It's a really good read for fans of late Silver Age to early Bronze Age Marvel Comics. It's a kind of unusual concept that Marvel could have been counted on to deliver during the beginning of its first great period. It's the story of a young Hungarian-American ice cream truck driver, kind of a little bit of a slacker, an underachiever. His name is Ilya Zyarsky, and he one day comes upon a costume in a cave in a forest outside of his native Cleveland, along with an ancient ritual tapestry displaying a certain pose that, if perfectly assumed while wearing the ritual garment, will give one the totemic power of a legendary animal called Apama, a beast so powerful that it bested every other animal in the world back during the ancient days of creation, and which claimed as its prize total anonymity. It chose to remain hidden from the sight of all other animals and the eventually emerging humankind. So it's the most powerful animal that mankind has never seen. And this young ice cream truck driver suddenly has all of its abilities. So what does he do with them? He's not sure, but it's kind of fun watching him bum around Cleveland, encountering various superpowered weirdos to fight while he tries to figure it all out for himself. So that's written by Ted Sikora and Milo Miller, with art by Benito Gallego, and his artwork is somewhat reminiscent of John Romita Sr.'s stuff. So, again, harkening back to late Silver Age, early Bronze Age Marvel, specifically Spider-Man. It really is a fun series. It's like Marvel of that era, but with a lamina of Bob Burden-style Dadaist absurdity placed over the top. Not so much so that it interferes with the storytelling values. It kind of lends a patina of the surreal to the proceedings. And also helping out is the peculiar choice of setting. I mean, it takes all the texture, all the local color put into the early Marvel Universe New York City, and somehow seamlessly translates it to 21st century Cleveland. You really feel, as you like to say about comic books that work hard at developing their setting, you really feel that Cleveland becomes a character in the story, and that this is a story that could take place no place else but in the Forest City. So, I enjoy Apama quite a bit, and now they're starting to publish it in single issues, so you can see what you've been missing in the traditional floppy format. So that's on page 372, you can order that, and you can also check out the first spin-off from Apama, Tap Dance Killer, featuring in true Silver Bronze Age Marvel fashion. She was briefly a love interest for Ilya when he took time off from being a superhero to participate in community theater, but then she was somehow brainwashed into becoming the murderous character she was playing in the Rocky Horror Show-like production that she and Ilya were putting on. And so she became her character, the Tap Dance Killer, and now she's kind of got this Jekyll and Hyde routine going on between her true identity of Nikki St. Clair and the Tap Dance Killer. So that there's a spin-off. So try the Apama, and if you decide you like it, there's already an ancillary title that you can try at the same time. A whole Apama-verse, you might say. One which has Murd's seal of approval. Up on page 396, I wanted to call attention to a new issue of The Tick being published by New England Comics. They come up fairly sporadically, so whenever a new one pops up, I want to make sure it doesn't go overlooked by those who are interested, including myself. It's being written by the aforementioned prolific Mr. Cullen Bunn, and it's coming out in April, apparently, from New England Comics. After that, though, we're going to jump straight ahead. I have nothing until we get to the Titan Comics section. On page 419 is where that starts. And they've got a few things in the works that sound good to me. Starting on page 420, I mean, I know our usual sound mixer and switchboard operator Pants is not here right now, but I know he would want to mention, if he were, the Beatles Yellow Submarine hardcover, an original comic adaptation of the 1968 classic film celebrating its golden anniversary this year. And Titan is celebrating by bringing an adaptation by the famous artist Bill Morrison, probably best known for his work for Bongo Comics. He's also done some stuff for Mad Magazine, who apparently got started on doing a Yellow Submarine comic for Dark Horse several years ago, which never quite came about. But now Titan has given him the opportunity to finish what he started, and just in time for the 50th anniversary of that classic animated movie. That's on pages 420 and 421. There's a little interview with Bill Morrison up in the front matter of this preview's catalog, in which he reveals that he asked himself, when he, in asking himself this, he reveals to me his complete worthiness for taking on this project. What can he do in comics that can do justice to this highly strange, beloved, psychedelic concept that could not have been done in film? And the answer he came up with was, why don't I just turn every single page into the equivalent of one of those black light posters that I used to have up in my bedroom back in the 70s. This, even though it works as a work of sequential art, this graphic novel will apparently also have, each page is apparently also going to be a beautiful pin-up-worthy, black light poster-worthy image. As you can see by the couple of sample images on page 421. I am genuinely looking forward to this, and I'm sure that Pants won't be able to resist it either. Only quibble I have here is that it is a hardcover, which means that I will probably just, much as I would love to read it sooner, I think I'm probably going to wait until they release it in paperback, and if a couple years go by and they don't, I'll just have to break down and buy it on Amazon or something in hardcover form. But yeah, I am very excited that this comic is being made, and that it's being made by Bill Morrison. I do enjoy the occasional Bongo comic. He's turned out some good ones over the years, folks. He's, this favorite of the counterculture is going to be in good hands. And speaking of classics of the 60s, on page 422 and 423, we've got a 4-issue miniseries based on the classic science fiction drama series, The Prisoner. That's right, and it's written by Peter Milligan. And I can't sound off on it anymore because I've actually never seen a single episode of The Prisoner. That would be enough to make Pants do a bug-eyed double take at me were he here to do so. It's the first issue's got there's a Mike and Laura Allred cover, there's a photo cover, and there are a few other alternate covers, one of them by John McCrae. Even though I don't know the first thing about The Prisoner, I may need to give this a try. Oh, and on page 424, Titan is also offering an original art edition hardcover of artwork by, it's from another Prisoner comic project. This one written and drawn by Jack Kirby and Gil Kane, with writing assistance from Stainless Steve Englehart. So, that's something else to consider. Well, not for me to consider because it's a little out of my price range, and especially for a property that, as I've said, I know just about nothing about. But it may be of interest to some of you listening to give that a look. It's $80 prior to your DCBService.com discount, of course. And then on page 425, now Titan is giving us a second. They did one of these a few years ago, a second Supermansion miniseries. This is a digital streaming series available on the Crackle streaming service, but the reruns are being shown very late on Sunday nights by Adult Swim, and that's where I've been seeing them and enjoying them. It stars the voices of Bryan Cranston, Chris Pine as one of the bad guys, Keegan-Michael Key of Key and Peele, among others. It's stop-motion animated. It is very much the Robot Chicken mold. In fact, it's from some of the creative people who brought you Robot Chicken, including it's produced by Seth Green. It's many of the episodes written by Zeb Wells, who also wrote comics for a little bit and also writes quite a few sketches for Robot Chicken. And he does the voice of one of the main characters, Jubot, an android who's deeply existential and likes to get lost in bouts of self-reflection, usually right in the middle of superhero and villain brawls. It's a parody of the classic super team concept, your Avengers, Justice League types. There is a Captain America analog who's whose extremely and bumptiously dated views on certain subjects are a holdover from his being frozen in a block of ice, Captain America style, for several decades. And he's bringing some of the very worst Moors of the 1940s with him into the present day. And then there's Black Saturn, who is basically Batman if his parents had lived and he'd grown up to be a spoiled, rich little snot. And then Bryan Cranston voices the Superman analog, Titanium Rex. And it's probably the runaway character, though, is Cooch, who is a super-evolved cat who is just as venal and id-driven and short attention spanned a creature as you would expect a humanoid cat to be. Not exactly hero material, but she's about the best this team's got to work with. So yeah, it's funny stuff. It really is, and it's fairly smartly written. It's a half-hour format, and it's in its second season now, I think, or the third season's about to debut on Crackle. Second season's being rerun on Adult Swim to generate interest. And smartly, they're producing this comic book two-issue miniseries tie-in at about this time. I didn't buy the first miniseries, and I've been regretting it ever since, because a little bit later I got to see the show, loved it, and wanted to find a trade paperback of it. Hopefully I'll be able to find one eventually. But I will be buying this new two-issue miniseries, and if you're a fan of the animated show, I recommend you do the same. And then on page 444, a quick shout-out here to the second issue of Andy Diggle's reimagination of the classic Valiant character Shadow Man under the in the Valiant section of the book. And just like that, we are done. Yeah, that is the last thing that I personally had to mention in this month's previews catalog of things due to ship mostly in the month of April. So on behalf of Chris and myself, thank you for following along. Hopefully we've turned your attention to some worthy purchases here. And I'd like to give thanks, as always, to our sponsor, DCBS, the Discount Comic Book Service. Visit them at dcbservice.com. Great deals, great convenience, unparalleled customer service. The best place we know of on the Internet to order your comics for shipment directly to your home. And finally, before I sign off for this episode, I did want to remind everyone once again about the impending Comic Geek Speak Best of 2017 awards. Visit thecomicforums.vanillaforums.com. Go to the On Topic forum, find the Best of 2017 nominations thread for the full details, a full list of categories in which we're accepting nominations from you, the listeners. Come up with your nominations and then email them into bestof@comicgeekspeak.com by the end of the day on March 11th to make your voice heard in those proceedings. Exciting stuff. If you'd like to send us an email, our address is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave a voicemail, you can call 267-702-6642. You can like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @ComicGeekSpeak. You can visit thecomicforums.vanillaforums.com, not only to put together your nominations for the Best of 2017 awards, but also to leave feedback on this and many other episodes of our podcast. Let me know what you're ordering from previews this month, anything I might have missed. And also engage in fun, geeky discussions with lots of other listeners to the podcast. Just internet friends you haven't made yet. We'd like to extend special thanks to our friends and listeners who have donated to the show in the past. We really appreciate it, and the show would not be what it is today without you. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.